This isn't like any other Ghostface.
What's up, April here, and welcome back to The Struggle Is Real, my YouTube channel where I do TV and movie reactions and reviews, all for your viewing pleasure. And also mine. Today I'll be reviewing Scream 6, which is, as the title suggests, the 6th installment in the Scream franchise. Now, this franchise has been going strong, or off and on strong, since 1996. I have been a fan of Scream since then, and I was actually really very excited when I saw the trailer for this movie. It actually looked really good off the bat. It looked super violent, which a good Scream movie should be. The kills looked like they were gonna be on point. I was really excited going into this movie. And you know what? After seeing it, I have to say, it did its job. It did a pretty good job. It did a really solid job, honestly. Coming off the back of Scream 5 or Scream 2022 or whatever you want to call the 5th installment in this franchise, it did a great job picking up off of that, not only developing the characters that were introduced in Scream 5, but also setting a new storyline as well. Now, Scream 6 is following the stories of the survivors of the previous Woodsboro massacre that happened in the 5th installment of Scream, Sam and Tara Carpenter and their friends Mindy and Chad Meeks Martin, who are now in New York City, hoping to start their lives anew and embrace their college experience and kind of put what happened in Woodsboro behind them. Almost similar to what Sydney was trying to do in Scream 2, where she was trying to go to college and just kind of forget about what happened in Woodsboro, just trying to move forward and enjoy their college experience. With the exception of Sam, who is finding it very difficult to put what's happening behind her because, spoiler, not spoiler, since I assume if you're watching this review then you've clearly seen Scream 5, or at least a recap of Scream 5, which would be right there for you to check out. She's murdered the killer in the last movie, which happened to be her boyfriend Richie, and now she's labeled as this pariah, this murderer, when in actuality it was clearly self-defense because he was trying to kill her, and so was Amber for that sake, but that's beside the point. But she's kind of finding it hard to move on in this movie, and despite, you know, wanting to, she also feels like the ghost of her serial killer dead dad is just looming over her head at all times, and it kind of affects the decisions that she makes in this movie and how she handles her relationship with Tara, which is fair because they faced trauma in the last movie, so that would make sense, wouldn't it? Now, each new Scream movie brings a new cast of characters, and because this Scream movie takes place in college, we got some college students coming in to join the cast. So for this movie, we have Ethan, who is Chad's roommate, Quinn, who is Sam and Tara's roommate, Anika, who is Mindy's girlfriend, and Danny, who's not a college student, just a next door neighbor who's attractive, and Sam's looking at him with all these googly eyes. Then you have Detective Bailey, who works for NYPD, who is Quinn's father, who investigates the case of Ghostface once he pops back into their lives, because this is what Ghostface does. I also love that it brought back the character of Kirby from Scream 4. A lot of people were wondering what happened to her after Scream 4, and then there was like this little nugget of hope in Scream 5 in that little YouTube side panel where we actually saw that she was a survivor. So to see her come back in this movie as a character was amazing. Whether she lived or died or was a ghost face or not a ghost face, I will not be revealing that in this video. There's no spoilers here, I told you that. But it was so dope to see her come back into the fold, at least for this movie. Now, I did think that setting this movie in New York was a really great refresher. There, strangely, are not that many horror movies that take place in New York that are a part of a franchise. Not to say that there aren't horror movies that take place in New York, because there are, but within a franchise there are not that many that really hone in on the staples that New York kind of has to offer. And as someone that is actually from New York, I thought this movie did a really amazing job taking some of those quintessential aspects that are specific to New York City and infusing them into the movie, and made it more scary, or gave it some more thrills that, you know, we're kind of used to the same things, because Scream is always taking place in the same town with the same things, and so it taking place in a new location, unlike what happened with Scream 3, which we don't talk about once again. I thought that this did a really good job. In the trailer, for example, you see that there's a scene that takes place in the New York City subway system, and there's possibly a ghost face there, possibly not a ghost face there. What's going on, we don't know. And that scene, when you watch the movie, is absolutely incredible, because it really shows you the chaos of taking MTA, and not because there's a killer down there. There's just complete and utter chaos when you take MTA at any one point, and it's even more heightened when there's the possibility of there being a killer that you may or may not know on the train. I thought that was great. There's also a really dope scene that is also shown in the trailer where there's trying to cross from one building to the next using this ladder. I thought that was great. The kills in this movie, in terms of a Scream movie, were A++. There are some really solid moments there where you're just like, damn. And you think to yourself, Ghostface is pretty vicious in this movie. I mean, just from the trailers alone, we saw that with the fact that like Ghostface was kind of like juking the person with the shotgun, and it was very evident that in this Scream movie, Ghostface wouldn't be this kind of like bumbling entity that they've somehow tended to be in previous Scream installments, where they could get, you know, hit in the face with a freezer door, or, you know, tripped up or something like that, or knocked in the forehead. No. Now granted, you know, there are some really interesting battles going on with Ghostface and some of these characters in this movie, but for the most part, you know, Ghostface came to get stuff done. There were no games going on in this movie. Ghostface definitely came to handle the business, and the business was handled. I do feel like with this movie, there were some attacks, some Ghostface attacks that were so vicious, in my opinion, that I feel like under different circumstances, some people might not have survived them, and they happened to survive. And I kind of disagree with that without giving any spoilers. I feel like based off of injuries that some characters might have sustained, there's no way that they would have survived that. But alas, people, you know, some people made the cut, some people didn't. Ha ha ha, made the cut, ha ha. But with that being said, overall, I definitely think that out of the movies that the franchise has produced so far, this one was probably the most vicious, not only in terms of the graphicness, but it did a good job, you know, carrying on the ludicrousness that the Scream franchise always manages to bring. Scream also typically has an opening scene or an opening kill that's pretty iconic, and I thought this movie actually did a good job relaying that as well without giving any spoilers or saying who's involved in that opening scene. I thought it was A1. You kind of know the direction that it's going, but I thought it was pretty well done. Now, in terms of knowing the direction that is going, for me anyway, I can't speak for other people, but as much as I love the Scream franchise, I've always felt it at times to be predictable in terms of who the Ghostface ends up being, you know, who the killer reveal is once you get to the end of the movie. And there's always little breadcrumbs along the way over the course of the movie that kind of leads you to who, you know, Ghostface is, and that's on purpose. And so I feel like I personally was able to figure out who Ghostface was, so when I got to the end of the movie, I was just like, yeah, no, that definitely tracks. But that didn't take away the experience for me. I was just like, okay, cool, like, that's fine. I did think that the reasonings for this Ghostface were, yeah, right up there with being just as psychopathic as, you know, any other Ghostface reasons for ghostfacing. Ghostfacing, is that a verb? It is now. But yeah, I thought it was, you know, pretty solid. I do think that it's interesting the direction where the franchise appears to be going with the two sisters, who are obviously, you know, staples at this point in this next iteration of Scream, especially because most people know that Neve Campbell's character, Sidney Prescott, was not in the Scream movie because unfortunately her and the studio could not reach a financial agreement on what to pay her. She felt like she needed to get a certain amount of money. They didn't want to pay her that, which I feel like is ludicrous. Her and, you know, David Arquette and Courtney Cox have been carrying this franchise for, you know, over 25 years. Give them what they deserve. But they didn't. She's not in the movie. but it didn't actually take away from the movie with her not being in it. They spoke on the fact on why she wasn't, physically present as things were going on, and it was perfectly fine. And it kind of gives you a little bit of hope that the franchise, will be carried on in her stead, whether or not she decides to come back, or whether or not they reach some type of agreement where she comes back for the 7th installment, if there's a 7th installment, where you feel like it'll be okay if she doesn't come back, even though if she does come back, that's also awesome as well. And of course, because Scream is a very meta franchise, there was, once again, just like there was in the last movie, a speech, talking about who the killers could possibly be, or why the killers could possibly be, because in the grander scheme of things, Scream 5 was kind of following the blueprint of the original Scream. This Scream movie, Scream 6, was actually following the blueprint of Scream 2, just like in Scream 2, they were in college, they're in college in Scream 6. In Scream 2, Randy was giving rules for the sequel. It's bigger, better, uncut, and all that. And in this movie, Mindy is doing the same thing that she did in Scream 5. She's telling you, listen, this is the next movie, this is the next series of events. Things are bigger, things are crazier, kills are all over the place, everyone's a suspect, everyone could be taken out. It's insanity. And guess what? She was right. There was insanity. Things were bigger. Things were definitely more insane. But I was here for it, and I actually liked it. And I look forward to if they decide to do a Scream 7, which, to be honest with you, it's leaning towards that way. Anyway, if they decide to do a Scream 7, should kind of be the conclusion of this, because if you think about the original Screams, originally, Wes Craven's idea was for the first 3 Scream movies to be it. Like, it was supposed to end at Scream 3. However, once again, my opinion, Scream 3 was terrible. It sucked. I'm sorry. There's no looking past it. It just was not good in my opinion. And so Scream 4 came out, and Scream 4 to me is a gem. I absolutely love Scream 4. I feel like Joe Roberts as a character is the GOAT in terms of Ghostface. She basically set the precedent for the reasonings behind being a Ghostface. She wanted the fame.
What world are you living in? I don't need friends. I need fans.
That's what it is. What was she supposed to do? Go to school, get a job? She literally said no to all of those things, which I feel like is also pretty relevant to today's society.
Look around. We all live in public now. We're all on the internet. How do you think people become famous anymore? You don't have to achieve anything.
So if anything, she was ahead of the curve. But Scream 4 kind of stands alone, especially in terms of time frame too, because Scream 4 was 10 years after Scream 3, and then Scream 5 is basically almost 10 years, 11 to be honest, after Scream 4. So it's just kind of like this little middle tentpole between one set of movies and the other. So if anything, to kind of round that out, I feel like Scream 7 would kind of be the conclusion of this set, or this trilogy of movies, in my opinion. I think that's what it should be. Is it going to be? I have no idea. All I can do is sit here and speculate wildly. But between the new and returning cast of characters and the sprawling landscape of New York City, this movie actually does a really good job at intertwining all of the chaos of New York City and the chaos of not knowing if any one of your friends or loved ones could be plotting your demise, as any good Scream movie does. But I did quite like this movie. I thought it was a dope addition into the Scream franchise, and who knows where they're gonna go with Scream 7, if they come out with a Scream 7, if they don't. But I did quite like it, and I advise you, if you are a Scream fan, to go check it out, and if you're a fan of horror, to go check it out, because there's some pretty gnarly kills in this movie that I think that anyone would enjoy if you're into that kind of stuff. Anywho, thanks so much for joining me for this review of Scream 6. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, more movie and TV reactions and reviews. And for The Struggle Is Real, I've been April, and I'll see you real soon. Peace!